Okay, hello everybody. Glenn here at Syngenta, and I'm really pleased to say that Sean has got some really interesting trial work to share with us. I've been chasing some uh, decent Chafer data for a long time. They're notoriously difficult insects to pull some good trial data on, but Sean has a really nice user trial that he's going to share with us today, and I'm looking forward to it. Sean, why don't you tell us what you've been up to?
Yes, happy to, Glenn. I will share my screen, which is this one. And yeah, we'll run through it. It was a really interesting project to get hands-on with. You know, I love digging up insect pests, so I'm happiest when out in the field doing this. So yeah, it was a really nice project that we did. We sprayed last year, but we did the assessment this spring, so it was really good to get out and see what was going on. So just to give a little bit of background, it's in a club in North Lincolnshire in the UK. So Forest Pines Golf Club, really nice course, roughly up here on the map. My geography is not perfect, but I spent a while trying to get that pin in the right place. So hopefully it's about right. Generally a sandy soil site, hence probably why we're seeing the chafer grub problems. So nice and free draining generally. You know, he didn't struggle with the rain as much as a lot of courses around that area, partly because he's on that sandy sites, but the chafers are sort of the offset to that, I guess. So the reason the trial came about was in 2022, they'd applied Acelepryn, but they didn't get the level of control they were expecting to get. So they wanted to see what was going on. So ICL went out to do a lot of investigation. So Henry from ICL, the technical manager there, went out to have a look around and see what was going on. So this is some of his pictures from 2022. So the damage is primarily from bird pecking. So you can see here on the fairways the kind of damage that they're doing there, and in some areas, sort of big widespread areas of turf loss. So obviously unacceptable levels of damage for the
Yeah,
services they're trying to give.
that's some significant damage there, isn't it? And a really good important point to take from this as well is if you're not seeing the levels of control you hope for or are expecting, then make sure you get in contact, because if we can, if there's any possible way we can get in and do some support work or some trial work, we will, just to understand what's going on. It's a learning curve for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. So Henry dug some of the chafers up as well, had a look at them under the microscope, and yeah, had a little dig around and see what was going on there. He estimated the chafer grub to be roughly 40 to 60 grubs per meter squared, so pretty high infestation levels. But obviously, it's notoriously hard to get accurate numbers unless you're kind of corrowing off the whole surface and really doing meter by meter analysis. So it's a really difficult thing to get exact numbers on. In terms of the trial, there was just 3 treatments, so I'll just run through that briefly. So treatment number 1 is just full on untreated. You know, nothing is applied to control the chafer grubs. So yeah, as it would be. Treatment number 2 is just straight up Acelepryn solo. So you've got your Acelepryn applied, targeting the chafers on the 20th of July, and at the normal rate, so 0.6 litres a hectare in 600 litres of water. And then the third and final treatment is the Acelepryn getting applied at the same time point, but then followed 14 days later by that Nematrident B. So the Nematrident B going down 14 days later and applied at 2.5 billion per hectare with 5 litres of the Nema spreader as well.
Right.
So yeah.
So this trial is going to show us what level of control the Acelepryn gives over the untreated, and also the added value of adding that Nematrident B post Acelepryn application.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So.
So we made the applications in 2023, and then we did a destructive assessment back in 2024. So in terms of finding the sites, we needed areas of high chafer activity, and it's something you highlighted at the start, Glenn, is that to get the perfect trial, you need really high levels of pest pressure really consistently across the site. You know, if you had an entire golf course that's got 50 to 60 chafer grubs per meter squared, then you're going to have a really good trial. But generally, we find chafers are patchy, and it changes year on year, and maybe it's to do with the prevailing wind when they're egg laying or something like that. But it tends to move slightly, and yeah, it's really hard to get uniform coverage. So we worked with the course manager to identify 3 areas that he thought were most severely affected historically by chafer damage. So we were hoping we would still get good chafer numbers in those areas. So these are the 3 areas that we chose for the trial, the most severely affected areas. So then I wasn't there for the day of the Acelepryn application, and the team there did that on their own, but I went for the nematode application day. And I guess when I was thinking about the trial, I was thinking what happened, and did I think it was a success, and what did I think of what I saw and what went on. So I knew that soil temperatures was a really, really important one, so we checked that. Yeah, really happy with the soil temperatures when we made the application. The next thing to consider would be where all the filters removed from the sprayer. Yep, I was there. I saw them come out. Really, really, yeah, a bit challenging to do, but as a one-off, you can get it done. It's not beyond technical capabilities of anyone. The next thing would be irrigation or rainfall afterwards. Now you can kind of see how lush and green it looks in the background here. We'd had rain, I think the 2 or 3 days before. Last summer was basically just a monsoon season for most people. There was a lot of rain, so I ideally wanted irrigation to go on as soon as we'd finished spraying the nematodes. That's what I had in my head. But because the golfers had just seen lots of rain and there was still kind of, that in their mind, I think if we'd have turned the irrigation on, there'd have been a bit of a mini riot on the day. So yeah, I wasn't able to get the irrigation turned on, but we did have rain later that evening. So I gave a small tick for that. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but we still got rain later on. But you can see, there's a little bit of UV damage to my face there. So it was a warmish day. So I was worried, were we still going to get efficacy if we applied in these conditions? And yeah, we maintained soil moisture afterwards. And luckily it was that summer last year. We did have a lot of rain, so we were able to maintain it. And it's something we've talked about a lot, is this conscious compromise, isn't it? It's like knowing what you've done. Yes, work best you can to get the irrigation, but if it's not possible, then maybe you go ahead and maybe you still get good efficacy. So we'll see how all those things came together.
So this is a really good example of a real life trial or a real life situation, isn't it? It's far from a perfect application, but we've ticked most of the boxes as well as we can. I guess the thing that's compromised is we would have liked irrigation or rainfall immediately after application to wash that nematode off the leaf, and that's where we've reached our compromise. But we've ticked as many boxes as we can. So yeah, it's very different to what we do in different kinds of trials where we get everything perfect because we're dealing with small plots. And that's why these user trials are so important, I think, because it shows us what is actually possible in real life.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, isn't it? We do a lot of lab trials. They're really, really important to frame the work that we do. But this is not a sprayer that I've brought in from John Deere or anything. This is just fully their sprayer. I'd have loved to get in it 3 days before and clean it to make sure not a single nematode died. But this was just doing it how it would be done. That's exactly how it would be done in the field. So yeah, filters out and then getting the application on the day. So yeah, I did an illustration for the trial. This is the drawing I did, but Glenn kicked up a fuss that my artistry wasn't good enough, so I had to make a different shiny new one. And here we are. So yeah, this is just to illustrate the areas. So we've got 3 areas that are treated, and then in each of the areas, this is what they look like. And this isn't a aerial view of forest pines. This is somewhere in the US from one of our marketing shots, but just to highlight how it happens. So you've got in each area, you've got an untreated area, obviously no product going down. You've got an Acelepryn treated area, and you've got an Acelepryn Nematrident treated area. So 3 areas, and then we will come along and take 15 samples from each area. So 15 samples from here. The idea is we don't go too close to the edges in case there's sort of edge effects. So it all comes from that sort of central band. 15 from each one of these. So we take 135 digs. So that's your little buckets and spades coming up there. So yeah,
because we've done this in 3 places around the golf course.
Yeah. So 45 and then another 45 at the next site, and then another 45 at the next site. And that's what makes it a real challenge. With leather jackets, you can see damage on the surface, and you can do a bit more of a visual assessment without breaking ground. But with chafers, the only way to see them is either at flight, which is really hard to track and understand exactly when it is, or you've got to get under the surface and physically dig them up to get numbers. So it's a lot harder. And most places that I go to and I say I need to dig up your course, they say no, thank you. So yeah, it's a challenge to get the data out. So what did the digs look like? So we used turf doctors to cut the turf area. So you can see here, just gets dug up. You just bang the turf doctor in, take it out, and then we sort of essentially crumble up the substrate and go through it, and then we find the chafers that we can find in there. So you can see it wasn't the most pleasant day for digging. Fair bit of rain, but it did mean it was nice and moist, and it did mean that the soil came part nice and easy, and also they were nice and close to the surface. So the first few we had to dig deep just in case there was chafers lower down, but actually every single one of the chafers we found during the excavation was in the top 1 to 2 inches, most of in the top 1 inch. So it meant we were able to not go down so deep, so the digging didn't take as long as I had thought it might. Yep, then every grub that we collect was graded and recorded, so we scored them as either small, medium or large. And you can see what we're working with then. And we talked about this before we came on air, Glenn, but I was expecting that it was just going to be uniform, right? You'd just go to a site and it was just going to be Welsh chafers, or it was just going to be cockchafers, and it was going to be nice and simple. And the reality was that it wasn't like that. There was a multiple different species, and you can see in here these huge ones. They're so large. You can see some of them. I mean, I don't have tiny hands. They're not the biggest spades in the world, but these are good sized chafer grubs against my hand there. Those are too big to be anything other than the cockchafer larvae there. So finding some of those on site, but then also some of the Welsh chafers and some others. And we sent them all off to get ID'd, but it's just really hard for the ID to get. So a lot of them do come back as inconclusive, unfortunately. But you could tell when you were looking at them that there were different species, but you're looking at different species at different stages. It kind of shows the complexity of this challenge.
Yeah, they are very difficult to identify from their raster patterns because they are all different sizes and different things going on. And yeah, this is this is an extreme example, but this is normal of what you would find on golf courses, a wide range of ages and a wide range of species, which is why it's very difficult to pull decent trial data out all the time, because we know that Acelepryn by itself is very effective on those juveniles, but it's always going to leave some remaining if you have these mixed life cycles in there.
Yeah. So the results are in. So we've done the applications, we've waited for the spring, we've gone back, dug them up, counted how many, scored which plots they were in, and the results come out like this. So you can see compared to the untreated control, and this is the mean for the whole trial. So, combining the data for all 3 of the sites that we dug, that we see really good levels of control in the Acelepryn, and then even more improved levels of control when we're doing the combined strategy.
Okay, so 65% control with the Acelepryn.
Yeah.
But we've got a wide range of species and ages in there, haven't we?
Yeah, and we always say you can expect 90% control, but we're always targeting those youngest larvae. So if you think of in any population, you've probably got 3 years worth. It's very hard for you to target the top 30%. The middle 30% is going to be a challenge, and it's the bottom 30%. So really, you should be seeing 30 to 40, I guess, but having higher numbers is really promising to see.
Good.
So yeah, that gave us an average of 24 grubs for 15 samples. So that was what we were getting in the untreated control. But just something to highlight here is just the challenge. So this line is the error bar, so it's showing how uncertain that number is. So that 24, it's saying could be as high as 40 plus, and it could be as low as under 10. So there's a lot of variation in those numbers, and you see that all through. And this is part of the challenge again with different densities. What we need to see is uniform densities, so those error bars are much reduced, and we can rely on the data a lot more. But with this, there's just a lot more uncertainty, so it's harder to draw conclusions from it.
And again, this reflects very closely with the data set I've got on all the chafer grub work I've done. We've got really positive trends on control levels and added value of the combination, but this massive error bar where they're really inconsistent. Now, what that error bar is telling you on the untreated control is just the huge range that there was. You'd be going to some plots and there'd be hardly any, and you go to other plots and there's loads. And that's why it's so difficult to pull good, strong statistics out on this pest.
Yeah, because it comes down to numbers then. If you only find 3 or 4 in your untreated plot and you find 2 in your Acelepryn plot, then in terms of statistics, it looks terrible. It's like, well, it's not worked at all. And it's actually like, well, it's just there's not enough numbers to draw real conclusions. So that's the difficulty we have there.
Okay.
So of the 3 sites, 1 site had very good population pressure. So 2 had really quite low population pressure, not really high enough. But that was, we saw that in the averages, they're averaging 24. But actually in this site, hole 5, we had much higher population pressure, so we could draw a bit more of a conclusion from the hole 5 data. So
okay,
we saw
so
the
what
average.
we've done here is we've gone to 1 hole the
Yep.
highest pressure one out of those 3 individual trials that we've done,
Yes.
and we're just looking at that data set now.
Yeah, and
Great.
in this one, you've got 59 coming out of the untreated area. So from those 15 digs we did, you've got 59 Chafer grubs coming out of there, 19 in the Acelepryn treated one,
Okay.
and 4 in the combination approach. So yeah,
Okay.
really good to see the reduction that we get there when we've got these higher numbers as well.
Great.
And this is just to kind of highlight that we do see reflections of what we've been seeing in the lab. You know, when you were coming up with the concept years ago of using this combination strategy, there was lab testing done, and we saw that it struggled more against the larger species, really good against the smaller grubs, but as they got larger, they're just more robust organisms, so they can just handle more. So you can see that here when we're talking about just the blue area, the smalls, you've got 40 in your untreated, so it's the majority of the population is those smalls. And then in the Acelepryn treated, they're taking that down to 9, so it's a really significant reduction on those smalls. And then of that 9 that's left, or that proportion that's left, they're weakened from the Acelepryn, we know that. And you can see that the Nematrident and the Nemaspreader is coming in and giving us control there, so it's bringing that down to 0 for those small. So that's really, really nice to see. Similar story for the mediums. You know, you've got 17, a good population there, but it's significantly reduced again. You know, it's really being pulled down, that number, and then again taken down to 3 in the combination strategy. But like we say, with the largest that we're seeing, yes, there's only 2 in the untreated, but there remains 2 in the Acelepryn and still 1 there. So yeah, it's reducing, but we're not having that same effect as we are against those small grubs. So yes, we're still getting a level of efficacy, but it's not something that can be relied on to whack those largest grubs, unfortunately. And yeah, so we definitely saw, you know, an addition of Nematrident building on the control level in that project. So it was really, really nice to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Acelepryn solo in this area was giving 68% control. And then when we built in the combined program, we're bringing it up to 93% control. So it's really, really good to see that level of lift we got with the combined strategy.
Yeah. But a higher level of control on those smaller ones.
Yeah, and it's really hitting those small ones hard, yeah. So yeah, in summary, we've gone through a lot there. The programmed approach is definitely required on top of most Chafer species. So just making sure that you do sort of build that in, because yes, we're taking out some big ones, we're taking out a lot of medium ones, we're taking out most of the small ones. But remember, in year 1, you've got all of that mixed bag in there, and then it's year 2 that you can start building. In year 3 for the cockchafer species, you're going to have to go year on year on year, because even if you do have a species that's only going to last 1 year, like the garden chafers, then you're going to get some level of reinvasion from fields and amenity areas around as well. So it's just considering that and building that into your program. In terms of getting the best out of Nematrident, we want to be going for soil temperatures of 12 degrees plus, so we get that nematode activity. So this is Nematrident B that we're going for Chafer grubs with.
Yeah, and that's not to be confused with Nematrident F that we're using in the autumn for leather jackets, where we're dealing with a soil temperature of 8 degrees. So
yes,
this summer one, the Nematrident B, 12 degrees soil temperatures is what we're looking for.
Yeah. So, you know, sweeping statement, that's going to be June to August generally. But what we would 100% recommend is using Turf Advisor to monitor your site. Yeah, it's a free tool to monitor your soil temperature, so do engage with it. So this is data you pulled out a while back, so 5-year mean daily temperatures, and this is trying to see the application window. So essentially, this is the soil temperature across the year, the red line being 12 degrees, so we don't want to be anything below that is going to be too cold. So you can see this is the window we have to get our Nematrident B application in. Obviously, we wouldn't want to go right up to the line, because we need 1 to 2 weeks afterwards for the nematodes to do their work. So you can see for Inverness, the coldest part of the UK and Ireland, we can see that we've got a fairly good window, you know, June to August. And these are the trend lines that are averages, remember, and you can see the spikes in those averages. In a given year, these spikes could be huge. So it's about watching that for your specific site, because every year is going to be slightly different. When we move halfway down the country to Bingley, the window gets slightly wider, so you've got slightly more time in which to apply. So that's going to be the orange line going across there. And then if
And
we
I
go
guess
all the
this
way,
is the closest to forest pines, isn't it?
yeah,
That
Bingley would be
spring.
the closest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went down in that sort of July timing, so right in the middle of that application window. And then Southampton, obviously, the grey line, you can see much wider application window for them down there. But then other areas are going to be a challenge there, like keeping soil moisture and getting rainfall. So it's different challenges. So in terms of application essentials, we want to get that soil temperature right for the Nematrident B. We want to keep the soil moist for 2 weeks. So 2023 was actually quite an easy-ish year to do that because we had an awful lot of rainfall through that whole summertime all through into winter. And that allows for those nematodes to seek out. They're going to be doing that most effectively in the first week or 2 weeks. So there will be some nematode activity it before they've flown, making sure you wait to see your Chafer flight at your site and applying after that. We did do a lot of work on pest tracker with Chafers, but we just never really pulled out enough numbers to be able to give really good advice there. So it was just something we never quite got enough numbers on. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who made the project possible. So Steve, the course manager at Forest Pines, for allowing us to dig up big areas of the fairways. I can imagine that's not easy to watch as a course manager, me gleefully running around with a spade, but he did it and put a smile on his face. Craig from ICL for organising the project, and all those who came to dig in the rain, because it wasn't the most pleasant day for digging. So thank you everyone who came to help out with the spade as well.
Brilliant. Great piece of work, Sean. Really impressed.
Thank you.
What are your conclusions?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of the key takeaways, we definitely saw really good results of Acelepryn on the Chafers. It's something we've seen in the past that they do a really good job on Chafer grub. It's hard for us to pick out the difference between the two, because if the Acelepryn's doing good work, it's hard for the Nematrident to show its colours. We definitely know it needs to be a long-term approach. So you could see there the different life cycles and the different species that we had in the ground. So making sure you've got that programmed approach and it's not going to be a one and done thing. And definitely adding nematode, we saw improved levels of control. So really good to see.
Yeah, really nice. If I pair that up with my experience and the stuff I've done historically, I think I've got a few kind of summary or bits that I'd like to summarize. I think the thing I've taken out of this is good application is really important, not necessarily perfect. I think we place a lot of emphasis on trying to get the application of nematodes right, but it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. We've just got to get as close to it as we possibly can, knowing that there's always likely to be some compromise, but compromise is always fine as long as you're aware of it. I do wonder whether we should be kind of relabeling Chafers rather than species, as particularly when they're in the ground, as small, medium and large, rather than getting too caught up on the species. Looking at this, I'm not sure on that. It's something for us to discuss, and I'm really interested in what the industry thinks. I think committing to a long-term program is really important too, because if we use that small, medium, large example, if we're getting really good control of small and a bit of control on medium and very little control on large, we've got to commit to that program in these areas with high populations in order to get them under control. So I think that's something people need to think about. And it's just great to see continued data brought in, particularly from out in the field, that compares and contrasts quite nicely with all the other data we've collected to show those trends. Whilst we kind of explained how difficult it is to pull statistical results out on this, to see the same trend over and over and over again really shows that program is a good combination to help those people with high levels of pressure. It's not for everybody, but Acelepryn followed up by Nematrident on Chafers in the right situations where we can get a bit of control over soil moisture, I think is a really worthwhile program. And I'm really grateful to you for doing the work, and Steve, as you say, for letting you do it. That's great. Have you got anything to add before we close, Sean?
No, I think it was a strange year, 2023, in terms of if you'd have said we're going to go to a site in summer, you're going to spray nematodes and you're not going to use any irrigation for the next 2 weeks, I'd have said, what's the point? I'm not going, I'm not leaving my home. But actually, it was a really wet year and we got lots of rain. So it's just those considerations. Can you irrigate if you didn't get the rain? You know, that would have been a different challenge if it had been a normal summer with a big dry spell. Can you irrigate the areas that you've applied to? And for most people, that is a possibility. But if you're in an area, if you're getting hit by an area where you can't irrigate, just think, can I keep the soil moist? And if not, is that going to give me good value? But in this situation, you would have been absolutely fine wherever you were because we had enough rain at that time of year. So it was just a consideration. So no, really good comments from you, Glenn. Thank you.
Yeah, really good. Thank you very much, Sean. And I look forward to catching up with you all soon.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Bye.